whatever you wind up doing is exactly what you should be doing.
And I have not behaved one single day of my life. Not one day of my life have I behaved, and I am fine.
I need your help. I can't tell you what it is. You can never ask me about it later, and we're gonna hurt some people.
Whose car are we gonna take?
Let's turn the microphone on. Hello and welcome to the Nikki Maduro Show. Yeah, I was having a little bit of computer issues this morning. So the band is here though, Kim. So if the band is here, I am here. So I thank everybody. Happy Friday. We have a great show coming up. As always, John Rothmann will be joining us in just a moment, talking all things politics with our political roundup, including Senator Chuck Schumer's call for new elections in Israel. I can't wait to hear what John thinks about that. Already seeing some comments. Jeff starting us off. Bernie is in outer space. Everything free. Of course, Bernie Sanders working to give all of us a 4-day work week. I can't wait to get into this. Every time, Kim, and again, we'll talk about this after John's segment, but every time people push back on like a 4-day work week, I'm like, we got used to a 5-day work week. We used to work 7 days. So it's not as if it's just how we think about what work and what a work week is that matters. But, maybe Bernie's has got a little bit of high hopes out there. Kamala Harris making headlines by visiting what's been described, Kim, as an abortion clinic. And I don't think that there is a term that bothers me more than that.
She went to a Planned Parenthood.
She went to a women's health clinic. And I love that, like, an abortion clinic. You mean a place where women get health care? Because women can get prenatal care. They can have checkups, all sorts of things. And so it just bothered me a little bit. But we'll get into that. And then, of course, a story you sent me, Kim, regarding someone my daughter would love to see, Olivia Rodrigo. Olivia Rodrigo, she's been a huge proponent for reproductive rights. She speaks very openly during her concerts about that. And so, she's doing something at her concerts. I don't know why I keep saying contest. Concerts that I'm curious on how parents may feel about it. Olivia Rodrigo, I would say, tween, teen, early 20s popularity in music. So we'll discuss that. Emily Hovind with the San Francisco Chronicle will be joining us in the second part of the show. She's going to weigh in on Proposition 1. She's with the editorial crew over at the Chronicle. So she'll be sharing her opinion about that. And then sharing a very personal story of her move to San Francisco, which is a great example of just the nonsense of rules and trying to do things the right way. It just doesn't pay sometimes to follow the rules in San Francisco. So all of that plus Tim Sika to wrap up the show because it's Friday and we need to know what to watch at the movies. All right, before we get to John, you guys, please click the thumbs up button, show your support for the show. Make sure you have also subscribed to the Nikki Maduro Show and tell your friends as well. The super chat also live. You can get a super sticker, super thanks. And if you put in a super comment during the live section of the show, we will be sure to read it. And then, of course, please donate to our Patreon. It keeps us going. Just go to thenikkimaduroshow.com, thenikkimaduroshow.com. Click the Patreon link. It's right there. You could donate any amount you want. And if you like PayPal as much as we do, go to paypal.com, hit the send button, and put in the email, thenikkimaduroshow@gmail.com. All right, let us move on to politics. Oh, hold on. Eric says countries with a 4-day work week include Belgium, the UAE, Iceland, Lithuania, France. Oh, yeah. There's a guy.
I didn't know that.
I'll play you. When we talk about this, there was a data scientist on CNN. I believe he's a data scientist looking at the numbers of the 4-day work week. So don't think that it's, a fairy tale. It actually works. But he looks at the productivity of people on a 4-day work week. And I think you could fill in the blank of what he found. So that's all coming up. But first, we have to be joined. It's Friday. We need to know what the hell is going on in politics with our good friend, John Rothmann. Hello, my friend.
How are you? Wonderful.
I'm doing good. I'm doing very, very well. I'm so happy to see your face because when I saw, heard, and read the speech by Senator Chuck Schumer regarding Israel. I was like, I cannot wait to hear what John Rothmann thinks about Schumer's comments. Now, it was a long speech. I actually read the text of it just to kind of really dig into it. I want to play. I want to play a little bit for people that maybe didn't see any of the speech and just heard about it. Here is Senator Chuck Schumer again talking about basically calling for new elections in Israel.
The fourth major obstacle to peace is Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. As a lifelong supporter of Israel, it has become clear to me the Netanyahu coalition no longer fits the needs of Israel after October 7th. The world has changed radically since then, and the Israeli people are being stifled right now by a governing vision that is stuck in the past. 5 months into this conflict, it is clear that Israelis need to take stock of the situation and ask, must we change course? At this critical juncture, I believe a new election is the only way to allow for a healthy and open decision-making process about the future of Israel.
Okay, John, your thoughts.
First of all, many in Israel agree that there should be new elections. I personally believe that if there were new elections, Netanyahu would lose. That is the Likud, which is his bloc of voters. But the simple reality is Israel has a parliamentary system. It would be the equivalent, by the way, of someone saying, well, you need new elections in the United States. We have a presidential system every 4 years. But I must tell you, I think foreign interference in an American election or in an Israeli election or in an election anywhere is damaging. I don't think it matters whether Netanyahu is prime minister, to be honest with you. If Lapid or Gantz, and I'm familiar with both of them, were to be prime minister, I'm not sure their policy would be much different. The issue here is not what Israel does or doesn't do. The issue is for Hamas and the Palestinian Authority. They still maintain that Israel shouldn't exist at all. Hamas makes it clear in all of its statements. So any prime minister of Israel would face the same problem.
Well, let me just stop you right there, because I think a lot of people, and Schumer had mentioned in his speech, Netanyahu expressing, I guess, a lack of support or changing support to the two-state solution. So do you think that the other candidates or somebody who can replace him would be more in support of a two-state solution?
Okay, let's back up for a minute. Your opening didn't have to do with a two-state solution, and most of the openings haven't. They've had to do with saying that Schumer wants Netanyahu gone. My point is, no government of Israel is in favor of a two-state solution at this point for a very simple reason. If Hamas were to control the West Bank, Israel, its old border, was 9 miles wide. You could see from the hills of the sea. No Israeli government will stand for that. And Hamas has said, given the opportunity, they'll attack again. And frankly, there are real holes in the Palestinian Authority. Let me remind everybody, the issue is not a two-state solution. Hamas doesn't favor a two-state solution. They favor the elimination of Israel. The issue is the right of Israel to exist as a nation. And I would suggest to you, if the Palestinians want to end this, they should have a convention, put all of their forces together, and say they are willing to accept Israel's right to exist. But the problem is they won't, because the bottom line of the Palestinian aspiration is the elimination of Israel and the restoration of their vision of a Palestinian state. It's not going to happen. And it won't matter who's prime minister, whether it's left, right, or center. No Israeli government at this point is prepared to grant the idea of a Palestinian state unless the Palestinians concede Israel's absolute right to exist as a nation.
How do you think that this situation, Schumer's speech, plays out here domestically? And I'm talking about the upcoming presidential election between Biden and Trump. A lot of people are calling Joe Biden Genocide Joe. Obviously,
not a lot of people. A lot of people are not calling him Genocide Joe.
Loud people
The
are calling
Hamas forces and the radical forces in this country are calling him Genocide Joe. It doesn't matter. In the end, what matters is that American support for Israel is solid and firm, that everyone sympathizes with the plight of the Palestinians, that everyone understands that it is Hamas which has caused this chaos. After all, where do they find the command and control center for Hamas? Underneath the UNRWA headquarters of the United Nations headquarters, the relief headquarters. That's where the command and control station was. I'm completely sympathetic to the idea of creating a solution which is equitable and fair. But let me assure you that Palestinian rights will not be gained at the expense of Israel's right to exist. And if you were interviewing Gantz or Lapid, who are the two leading people, or Naftali Bennett, the former prime minister who may jump in again, they would all say the same thing I am saying. And one of the great disappointments has been the Palestinian Authority, which theoretically is more moderate. But if you listen to Mahmoud Abbas, he's not so moderate. So that's a problem. You know, my father used to tell me it takes two to tango. And right now, there is nobody to tango with on the Palestinian side. And that's the issue. How will it play out in this election? I think that Arab Americans, taking a hard look, understand that it was Donald Trump who wanted to ban Muslims from entering the United States. I don't think they're going to vote for Donald Trump. The danger is, from Biden's point of view, is if they sit out the election. I don't believe they will sit out the election. There is too much at stake.
Well, let's and thank you for that, John. But let's move a little bit deeper into the presidential election, and then, of course, the cases that are facing Donald Trump. The Fulton County DA this morning, the case against the Fulton County DA, Fani Willis, can continue, but apparently her boyfriend, I don't know, Wade.
He's the special prosecutor who she hired, who she had an affair with.
Right.
But you know what, Nikki? I'll shortcut it for you.
Okay.
The issue has nothing to do with that. It has to do with Donald
Exactly.
Trump and whether Donald Trump, in fact, tried to obstruct an election. And when I listened this morning on CNN, and I listened on Fox, and I listened on MSNBC, the simple truth is that's what matters. It's like being a magician, you know? You want to distract people. Fani Willis and all of that is a distraction. The issue is, did Donald Trump try to obstruct the election in Georgia? And the answer is yes. And ultimately, he'll be held accountable.
But the judge today had said that Fani Willis should not be disqualified from prosecuting the case, but that Nathan Wade, the special prosecutor, should either step down or remove himself from the case. How does this hurt the case? I mean, do you see this just as like a non-issue at all? Because it does seem to me that if you're removing one of the special prosecutors, it could, in fact,
He's
hurt the case.
gone. Nikki, he's
so?
gone. I mean, there's no question about it. The judge
John,
made it
weirder
very
things have
clear.
happened.
No, the judge said he cannot stay.
Mhm.
Either she goes or he goes. And believe me, if it were he or she,
Oh,
you
he
know
would go.
who's going to go.
Exactly.
But the bottom line, again, remains, and people may disagree with me, and I welcome that criticism. The issue is, did Donald Trump try to obstruct an election? That's the issue.
Right.
The fact that people used poor judgment when you're the district attorney and the special prosecutor is their problem, not the country's.
RNC co-chair Laura Trump says the committee that she's now on is not going to pay any of the legal bills for the former president. How much do you buy that? I just feel like the RNC is, and it's their right, to support their candidate. I think it was it Reagan who had somebody in his family also on the RNC back in the day? I believe I heard that on the radio as well. So it's not unheard of. I heard that someone in Reagan.
It wasn't someone. It was his daughter.
Okay, it was his daughter,
Maureen, who was very active and who represented her father. And then you may recall she ran for the United States Senate from California for the Republican nomination in '82 and got 1% of the vote. You know, I don't.
But it's not unheard of for people of the RNC to be closely related to the people that are running for president. Is my point.
It is unprecedented, except for that example.
Okay.
So there's not.
Are you concerned about it? Well, I don't know how concerned.
No, I want to know then, Laura Trump, whether she's going to demand that the $50 million that Donald Trump has paid in his legal fees, which were contributed by average American voters, whether that's going to be refunded. Right. Shouldn't Donald Trump have had to pay his own legal expenses? You and I know that the National Committee, now under the control of Donald Trump, is no longer the Republican National Committee. It's the Trump National Committee. And you know they're going to spend money. And so do I take Laura Trump's statement seriously? The answer is no.
Now, the appeal before the U.S. Supreme Court regarding the immunity claim by the former president. There are some people saying that there is just no way he's going to win that appeal. I guess it's really hard to look into a crystal ball. Do you foresee this happening? How optimistic are you that this is going
I'll
to
make
happen?
a prediction. I'll
Okay.
make a prediction. I'm going to stick my neck way
Please.
out so
Please.
you can chop it off. I think it'll be a 7-2 decision that
Okay.
a president does not have blanket immunity. I
Mhm.
think Alito and Thomas are likely to vote to uphold the idea of immunity. They will be a minority on the court. The fundamental decision of the United States versus Richard Nixon will be upheld, and Donald Trump will lose. And that is a problem for Donald Trump.
But is it going to stop him from getting elected, John?
I don't think that Donald Trump is going to win. And I'll tell
I
you
hope
why.
not.
No, take a look at the vote in Georgia, or take a look at the vote in the primaries. About 20% of Republicans will not vote for Donald Trump. If that number is maintained, there's no way he wins the presidency. But we'll see. You know what's fun, Nikki?
No.
Every Friday, you and I, until November 5th, we're going to have a chance to talk about it. But my expectation, and I say this not out of a matter of bias, people don't vote for, they vote against.
Yeah.
And the people who are voting against Donald Trump, and that includes a lot of Republicans, are really taking a stand. I have to make a comment, though, on the vice presidency.
Okay.
I have to because, first of all, Donald Trump will only take somebody who will do what he wants. That's why Senator Vance is in the running. That's why Elise Stefanik is in the running. Tim Scott is in the running. I think that's a real problem. But you know what really interested me this week? Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Oh, my God. I couldn't believe it.
Well, it's a joke. And the people he is thinking about are completely unqualified to be president of the United States. And the one thing you should think about when you are choosing a vice presidential running mate is, are they prepared to step in to the Oval Office? Can you imagine these people? I mean, it's crazy.
Aaron Rodgers, John. The name Aaron Rodgers, who is a football player. I feel like, and I don't want to make broad generalities, John, okay? I want to be fair, but it seems like so many times within the Republican Party, they don't care about qualifications.
No, it's not Republicans. Please, this is Donald Trump. When you take a look, the Republicans, you may not have liked Dick Cheney, but he was fully qualified to be president.
What about Steve Garvey? Steve Garvey is not qualified.
Okay, but Steve Garvey wasn't the choice for vice president of the United States.
I know, but I'm just
by the way, he's an artful dodger, as I like to point out. Now, of course, there's also Jesse Ventura, the failed independent governor of Minnesota.
Right.
Give me a break. And Gabbard, this screwball from Hawaii as a vice president. And there are others they're talking about. But I want to remind you of a historical fact. In 19, I'm trying to think now exactly the year. Well, I'll give it to you this way. You may recall that George Wallace ran in 1968. Okay. So let's focus on 68. The polls showed him with 20% of the vote. And you may recall he then made a choice for vice president in October of that year, and it was Curtis LeMay. Bombs away LeMay. And LeMay held a press conference with Wallace. Wallace was so embarrassed because LeMay was talking about using nuclear weapons. And let me tell you something, that was the end of the Wallace campaign. He sank to 9% from 20% in the polls. I think the problem Bobby Kennedy Jr. has is just that. And I would use that example because who you choose as vice president matters. And his father, Bobby Kennedy, the real Bobby Kennedy, the authentic Bobby Kennedy, understood that when he opposed Lyndon Johnson becoming vice president on the ticket with John F. Kennedy. So all I can tell you is Bobby Kennedy Jr. is an anti-vaxxer. He's not his father. No. And I personally believe that Bobby Kennedy will fail. Now, here's the kicker. The kicker is that running as an independent candidate for president only matters if you're on the ballot, because write-in votes never make a difference. Matter, yeah. He's on the ballot now in, I believe, 8 states, and Kim can check that, but I believe it's 8 states as of yesterday. I simply don't think that by the time of the election, Bobby Kennedy will be a major factor. No, I think his name is a factor right now, but he'll be exposed. He's an anti-vaxxer. He's a conspiracy theorist. And his choice for vice president which he's going to announce by the end of the month. And he's going to announce it right here in California. I can't wait.
I can't wait to see what that name
Well, I
is.
know we'll hear it live on the Nikki Maduro program.
There you go. If it's happening during my show, absolutely. All right, one more topic I wanted to bring up with you, and this was, of course, the TikTok ban, John. Some people are saying, this is a violation of free speech on one hand. Economically, it's going to hurt a lot of Americans that make their money. On the other hand, people are screaming national security. I'm kind of torn on this issue. And my reason is this. Yes, obviously, ByteDance, which owns TikTok, is beholden to the Chinese Communist Party. Okay, I will get that. But at the same time, are we going to remove a company from ever doing business, or any Chinese government or Chinese company from doing business in America? I feel like that's going to be a hard thing to truly do. Or third, does it matter that the type of business it is? TikTok gathers a lot of data. People input a lot of data into it. And so that can be manipulated or absorbed by the Chinese
Well, sort of like
government.
Facebook, right?
Exactly.
Now, look, let me be clear. I am opposed to censorship.
Mm.
I am opposed to any law which bans TikTok. Frankly, I've never used TikTok, but my children use TikTok.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of misinformation on TikTok. I know there's a lot of violence and sexual abuse and so forth on TikTok, but that can apply anywhere. No, this is the wrong thing to do. And I believe very strongly that if such an action were taken, the Supreme Court would invalidate it on the grounds of freedom of speech. So if we have a problem with the Chinese government, let's take it up with the Chinese government. If we have a problem with TikTok, then let's publicize it. Let's do a whole program, Nikki, on TikTok. Let's get your children on here to talk about TikTok.
Right.
Let's understand that this is the wrong thing to do. And the House of Representatives voting for a ban on TikTok made a huge error. And I believe that that it should not stand. I don't believe in censorship of any kind. And that applies, by the way, even when I disagree with somebody. Somebody asked me the other day in a similar interview, what do you think about neo-Nazis? Should they be allowed to be online? You're darn right they ought to be. Because the only way you expose them is when you see them in the sunlight of their truth, which we know exposes them. So I oppose any action against TikTok on grounds of freedom of speech. Years ago, when the Nutsies, as I call them, not Nazis, but Nutsies, marched in Skokie, Illinois, I was frankly not very popular with some, because I said, let them march. If they march, we know who they are.
Yeah.
They expose themselves for the silliness they exude. So I am in favor of freedom of speech, unalterably in favor. In fact, I was just talking, we're doing a whole thing on the murals at Washington High School. There was legitimate dissent about whether those murals should exist.
Right.
They're going to exist. We've won the court case. We're going ahead. But I said to the people who I'm working with, I want all the opponents' voices included in any explanation about the murals at Washington High School. And they looked at me. Why? And I said, because that's how you learn. You only learn when you hear criticism.
Yeah.
And so I've never been afraid of that kind of action. And when it comes to TikTok, I am in favor of anything that promotes freedom of speech. And therefore, the action by the House of Representatives, which was bipartisan, is absolutely wrong.
But do you think that there is a way of protecting our data from being, used by the Chinese Communist Party?
Sure there is. The same way we try to protect our intellectual properties.
That's true.
Okay, there are going to be issues. There are going to be ways around it. But any new technology, look, I'm thinking about AI. My wife, I'm not at home today. My wife retired effective at noon today.
Congratulations.
So we've been paying tribute to her. But I played a little fun with it. I wrote a beautiful tribute to my wife.
Of course you did.
Publicity purposes. And then I said to my wife, okay, let's use artificial intelligence. And I want you to plug in Herb Caen, Caen, who was the great San Francisco columnist. Let me tell you, it took not more than a minute. And artificial intelligence came up with a blurb on my wife that put me to shame. Now,
really,
for me to say that artificial intelligence can write a better piece than I can. Believe me, this is horrifying.
It's humbling, I guess. Yes.
No, horrifying. Yeah, maybe humbling. But the point is, that's the world that we are now facing. The world that you and I live in today, or that we faced when we were on KGO, where it relied on individual reaction, our talent. That is not necessarily true anymore. And that disturbs me. So I want everybody to know, as we have a problem with TikTok, as we have a problem with Facebook, as we have a problem with a whole host of new innovations in thinking, our world is going to change. And I have every intention of sticking around for as long as I can in order to see those changes. Somebody asked me, are you afraid of the changes? No, I'm not afraid, because I believe that human ingenuity will find ways for check and balance. If not, we're in deep trouble, because, Nikki, you and I will be superfluous.
Exactly. And that's the thing, John. Sometimes I just read some of these stories. There was a story this week about super coders, training AI to basically do their job. And it's this idea of humans building things that make us obsolete.
Can I tell you a quick story?
Yes.
I hadn't really heard of AI, but my kids had. And so about a year ago, they punched in two of my favorite political figures, Richard Nixon and Wendell Willkie.
Okay.
And they had AI produce an essay. Okay. First of all, Willkie and Nixon had no connection. Willkie died in 1944. Nixon wasn't elected to Congress till 1946.
Okay.
But this AI constructed the most nonsensical, ridiculous fairy tale. And my reaction was, it read creditably. If I didn't know the dates, if I didn't know the times, if I didn't understand what the overlap was and wasn't, and there wasn't, I would have been fooled. So this, to me, has to do with the heart of truth and what truth means. And one of the advantages to this podcast, or Mark's podcast, or Kim's News, or my Around the Political World with John Rothmann, is there is a human test. If I make a mistake, I have no problem admitting an error. But AI doesn't admit error. It goes ahead. So the most important single thing to me is our recognition of who is in control. This is similar to 1984. Go back and read the George Orwell novel, and you understand the danger that is implicit in all of this. When I heard Vladimir Putin this week talking about a nuclear option, remember that in the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis, the only thing that prevented a nuclear war was John F. Kennedy and Nikita Khrushchev, who both understood the implications of nuclear war. If you'd left it to computers, if you'd left it to artificial intelligence, God knows where we would have ended up. So I make the comment, I'm so glad you asked about TikTok. How Republicans and Democrats in Congress could get this on a bipartisan basis so wrong is astounding.
I don't think they fully understand the reach of TikTok and how it's actually used sometimes. I'm sure some of them do, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, especially because President Biden has said he would sign a bill if it makes it to his desk.
Unbelievably.
Of course, it's going to go to the Senate, and who knows what the Senate's going to do.
No, well, people say to me, you're never critical of Biden. Of course I am, and that would certainly go in. But I have a question for you.
Yes.
Do your children use TikTok?
Yeah. Well, my daughter can't have it. She had it for a brief moment. And then I took it away.
Yes, you took it away.
But I took it away. And I have it, but I rarely use it.
Can she really, let me ask you, does she have a way to get around you?
No, well, it's on my phone. So if she wants to be on it, I would know. So, and she'll go on with her friends. Yeah, her friends are on it. And again, she'll make TikTok videos with them and all sorts of things. But again, it's like any other social media. She doesn't have Instagram. That's an American company. It's up to the parents. And I will say that I think for me as an adult, and even taking the kids aside, somebody mentioned in the comments, look, if you're going to take my data, at least pay me for it. Disclose how my data is being used. And I just don't think that we're going to get that, obviously, with a Chinese company. But at the same time.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
I don't want to prolong this. I know you have other things to do this morning. but I want to ask you.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that when you Google something,
Yes.
your computer kicks it back to you and expands on it and
Oh,
the
yeah.
new product and all the rest?
I looked
My
up.
friends, that is data collection.
Yes. And it happens all the time. I looked up, funny story, just this week, John. I'm on Instagram. I see this ad for these pants that look really comfortable. I'm just being honest. They look really comfortable. I go on Google on my phone and I just Google it. I didn't even click the link of the ad. I went off of it, went on Google, looked it up. 2 seconds. 2 seconds. I go back on Facebook and Instagram, ads for that. And I didn't even click it within the app. So if you think it's TikTok and the Chinese Communist Party that is sucking up all your data and using it in whatever way they want to, you're mistaken. It's
I
happening
rest
all over.
my case.
Exactly.
And let me point out to everybody that it is because you have a conversation based on human intelligence,
Yeah.
where there's a real interaction, that we can come to this conclusion.
Yeah.
So I am delighted to announce that the Nikki Maduro program is Nikki Maduro's program
It is.
and not controlled by
There's
artificial
no
intelligence.
robot here. Absolutely. Congratulations to your wife. Brian says, Mazel tov to your wife's retirement. All the best in health. How good it must feel for her to be retired today, John.
You know what was very nice?
Hmm.
The reaction of the group she has managed for 11 years. They love her.
That's
They are
awesome.
devoted to her because she really worked with them.
Yeah.
And so it's a great thing when you retire. You know, I'm retiring after 50 years as president of the George Washington High School Alumni Association.
Really?
My retirement will be
Wow.
effective in May.
Well, congratulations to you.
Well, you know something? It's good to pass things on
Yeah.
to a new generation. And may I say, my greatest regret is that a station like KGO has stopped, and there is no new generation of leadership to take over. And let me point out to everybody, you had Nikki Maduro, you had Kim McAllister, you had Brett Burkhart, you had people who would have succeeded us and who would have carried on a tradition not only of talk, but of intelligent discussion. And that's gone too. And I don't know, last night, Mark Thompson did a pay for play thing, meeting people. And I came on for about an hour because I told him I'd do it. And you know, the greatest thing was the interaction between listeners and us. And it was a wonderful interaction. That is the kind of interaction that we need in order to move to the future. You mentioned to Steve Garvey, I wish I were still on the radio. I wish I had the time and the energy. And let me point out, tonight, or today rather, my Around the Political World podcast went down. I can't get it up. So thank God for Nikki Maduro, because Nikki Maduro is going to take what we have done right now, transfer it over to Around the Political World with John
Magic.
Rothmann. But that is the intelligence. And may I just conclude, because I know you want me to stop.
Never.
And, you know, I did get an award in high school, the award of the spigot, which read, "Once turned on, John could not be turned off." I have it proudly on my mantelpiece. But I want everybody to understand how important what Nikki and Mark and Kim, what they're doing. And I want to urge everybody to support it. And I want to thank you, Nikki, for allowing me to transfer what you have produced today to my website. So everybody listening to my 150,000 downloads, all of you should know, download the Nikki Maduro program. Make sure you listen to it. And Nikki, thank you.
Of course, John. We always love having you. I will definitely be sending this over once the show ends. We love having you. I don't want to talk politics really with anybody else, my friend. So we will talk to you next Friday. Thank you so much.
And thank you. And thank Kim. Kim did a great job last night. And I love her too. So thank you.
Thanks, Kim.
Thanks. Hi and bye.
Bye. Bye, John. Love ya. All right. That's John Rothmann. Again, download his podcast, Around the Political World with John Rothmann. It really is good. And yeah, I'll be sending this one to him because he was having some computer issues, which of course, in the grand scheme of doing this thing on the interwebs, that's what happens. All right. Okay. So let's do some headlines. And when we come back, let's get into it. The 4-day work week, 32 hours with no loss of pay. That is the key here, people. It is full-time pay is for 4 days of work. Is it too hard to wrap your mind around? Because there's data that shows that it actually makes business sense. So
Does it make you feel a little lazy? Like,
does it make you feel lazy
could
that you don't
really
work
be
7
working.
days? Does it make you feel lazy that you don't work 7 days?
No, it doesn't.
Okay. So then it's a mentality. It's a
Mhm.
mentality that we have. We used to work 7 days. We used to
Yeah.
work every day. We used to have our kids work. Like little itty bitty kids with their tiny little fingers used to work on the assembly line. That doesn't happen anymore. Lazy ass kids, right? Is that what
Right.
we're supposed to think? No. All right. I mean, we'll get into it. I have some thoughts on it. But again, we're supposed to be one of the greatest countries in the world. But when it comes to something like this, other countries do it way better than us. All right. Click the thumbs up button. Show your support for the show. And here's some headlines with Kim.
Now, from around the world to up your street, the Nikki Maduro Show presents News Czar Kim McAllister.
And good morning. Here it's former President Trump's election interference case.
I love the picture. The picture is just so funny.
What? The case can move forward with Fulton County DA Fonnie Willis on the job, as you mentioned, Nikki. A Georgia judge ruled Willis can remain on this case if the special prosecutor is removed. The judge also gave the option of Willis removing herself in order for the case to continue. Trump's legal team has tried to have Willis removed from the case due to her romantic relationship with the special prosecutor, Nathan Wade. Trump's legal team this morning saying they are very unhappy with the judge's ruling, and they will continue to fight for the charges to be dismissed because they feel there's a conflict of interest in this case.
It's not like he's saying he's innocent. This is what I wish people would just pay attention to. Trump never says, no, I didn't do it. He just says, nah, you shouldn't be charging me with anything because I'm Trump and they did that. And he never says, I didn't do it. So yeah, he's frustrating.
Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, President Biden. The Biden administration is trying to crack down on junk fees for college students and student loan borrowers. As part of the president's 2025 budget request, the administration is pushing to do away with the student loan origination fees, which are the percentage of the loan amount considered a processing fee. This fee rate ranges from 1% to 4%. President Biden wants it gone. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. plans to be in the Bay Area to make a big old announcement regarding his presidential candidacy. Kennedy plans to announce his running mate for his independent run at the White House March 26th in Oakland. No word yet on who the running mate will be, but Kennedy did tell the New York Times that New York Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers and former Minnesota Governor Jesse Ventura are among his top choices.
Okay, so I'm just going to go on record. Okay, This is the problem. So everybody wanted Trump to run for president back in 2015, 16 because it was funny, and then it became not funny, right? This is the thing. I want him to choose Aaron Rodgers just so I can laugh. And then there's a part of me that says, be careful what you wish for. I don't think that RFK Jr. has a shot in hell to being in enough states to make a difference, like John Rothmann had just mentioned. Anybody that thinks that Aaron Rodgers could be next in line to run the United States of America is bat-ass crazy. I'm sorry. He's just ridiculous.
I mean, listen, there are probably some sports figures that would be great leaders. Steph Curry said the other day that he's not ruling out a political career after basketball because he wants to use his platform for any way to give back, right? Okay. I mean, just because you played sports doesn't mean you're a good leader. And just because you're a good leader doesn't mean you had to have played sports. Like, I just don't think all athletes are just like everyone else. We're not created the same.
No.
And so it doesn't matter to me that he's a football player. If we're talking about Aaron Rodgers, what matters to me is that he's a conspiracy theorist, crazy nut.
He sucks, Kim. You could just say he sucks. He's not it. He likes to be controversial. He's one of those, I'm going to do my own research, but only research things that I agree with. And this is, of course, my opinion that I am expressing here. So let's just be clear. Aaron Rodgers is in no way, shape, or form qualified. I don't think that he's qualified to do anything above, let's just say, okay, he wants to run for city council. Give it a shot. You know what I mean?
Right.
Run on local elections. If you really feel politically that you want to have a say, fine. But to go from being a crappy quarterback for the Jets and play like not even a game to the second in command, he's been smoking too much weed. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. I would agree. There are people though, those anti-vaxxer people that will vote for him. You know, that's all they need to know. And you've got then the pair of them. Imagine, God, can you imagine if they actually won? Not that they ever would.
Not that they can, but yes, exactly.
They can't. But can you imagine what that administration would look like?
I think they'd be shocked. I think they would be like, "Oh my God, what the hell happened?"
What? Yeah, we're in power. What? So this is a story about the movie Rust.
Yeah.
Actor Alec Baldwin wants the manslaughter case against him to be dropped. He's like, this is enough. In 2021, cinematographer Helena Hutchins was killed after Baldwin's gun went off on the movie set. Although the actor, who's also a Rust producer, says he never pulled the trigger, Baldwin is set to stand trial in July for involuntary manslaughter. It's the same charge that the movie's armorer, Hannah Gutierrez Reed, was convicted of earlier this month. So...
yeah, it's an interesting case. I mean, the armorer, Hannah Gutierrez, was found guilty, but he did pull the trigger. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things. I mean, she was shot. He was holding the gun. I mean, again, I don't think that he meant to kill her. I don't think that he should go to prison. It's going to be an interesting case to watch.
This is on the rise, this type of crime in the city of Oakland. This is police seeing a dramatic increase in smash and grab robberies. Sometimes, even when people are sitting in their cars, people will walk up and smash the windows and take their stuff. Authorities say suspects, can you imagine? Authorities say suspects will walk up to cars idling at stoplights or at stop signs in traffic, smash the passenger window, and grab the belongings off the seat. Police say they are investigating this new trend. They're working to try to stop it. Robberies in general are up about 27% in Oakland this year compared to last year. 27% more robberies.
I wish that I just had a daydream in my mind. Like, if you try to smash my window, it's like electrified and then you're zapped and you're just paralyzed for like 30 seconds so that we can arrest you. I mean, again, I keep saying this every time we talk about it. It's a mentality. You have to think that absolutely nothing is going to happen to you for you to be so brazen. I mean, it's just insane. It's insane.
Or I guess, nothing, or a very slap on the wrist and you're back out on the street doing it again.
I can't imagine going up to a car in broad daylight with somebody in the car and doing that unless I really felt like they weren't going to stop me. Police weren't going to stop me. No one was going to stop me because that is insane.
Right? With you in the car. Can you, I mean,
No.
I keep my purse on the seat.
Of course. Where else
Next
do you
to
put
me?
on your head? I mean, come on. Although I will say this, you know what? Because I'm going to sound
Maybe
like
you got to put it behind the seat.
I got a
behind you
fanny
now.
pack that I always bring with me. I call it a satchel though, so it doesn't sound like a fanny pack. And I usually put it on my left side when I'm driving next to my car. So I just grab it when I open the car door. I kind of do it that way. Mostly I do that because the kids are sitting in the seat next to me. And so I'm always moving my purse and in the way or whatever. So I don't know if that helps or hurts because obviously they can come around the driver's side and get me too. So
it doesn't seem to be that that's what they do.
No.
They do it on the passenger side. They smash, they reach in, they take whatever's there and run off.
People are going to start arming themselves. You know what I mean? It's just, they're going to be shootouts.
We're living in the wild, wild west.
Exactly.
People are moving back to San Francisco. We know you
Boomerangs. Yep.
After seeing an exodus of people during the pandemic, the city is starting to see some growth again when it comes to population. The U.S. Census Bureau reports that between July of 2022 and July of 2023, San Francisco's population increased by 1,200 residents. While that number seems small, it's a far cry from when the city was bleeding residents who decided to move somewhere cheaper during the pandemic since they were likely going to have to work from home anyway and not go into the office. So people trickling back in.
Yep.
But residents in one San Francisco neighborhood are saying they are scared to leave their homes. Those in the Tenderloin area filing a complaint in federal court claiming San Francisco officials are allowing drug dealers and other criminals to set up shop where they live. They say it's so bad they're afraid to go outside. City leaders haven't commented on this complaint, but Mayor London Breed recently said the passage of Proposition E later this year would help bring more resources to clean up this area.
I mean, okay, so pardon me, Kim, and this is going to sound mean, but it's like, who bought a house in the Tenderloin, right? Like, like you have to know that there's bad areas. Although I was watching the news this morning and someone said it really perfectly. They're basically like, look, this doesn't happen in other parts of San Francisco. Why do they get to stay clean? Why do they have the cops responding immediately to things and we don't? Like it's like we're just the dumping ground for problems. Okay, we're going to contain the drugs here. We're going to contain the encampments here. We're not going to clean them up as quickly. Like, well, wait a minute. I live here and I don't want to see that. And that's absolutely true.
Yes, I agree. It's the streets are sketchy, and I think it's gotten worse, right? So maybe when they moved in, they were used to a certain level of crime, and then the pandemic and all the tents everywhere and the increase in crime, and maybe it's just now intolerable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Taylor Swift and Mickey Mouse. The Eras Tour, Taylor's version, is now available on Disney+. It hit the streaming service last night, a day earlier than originally planned. The movie raked in more than $260 million at the global box office to become the highest-grossing concert film of all time. Now, if you have Disney+, you can see it there too. Kansas City Chief teammates Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes are entering into the restaurant business together. There they are. The Super Bowl champions are opening a steakhouse in the Lowe's Hotel in Kansas City. The restaurant will be called 1587 Prime, which is a combination of their jersey numbers. It'll span 2 floors and have hyper subtle nods to their accomplishments on the field. According to the hospitality group Noble 33, that restaurant is set to open early next year. And Sunday is St. Patrick's Day. Named for the patron saint of Ireland, March 17th is the day. St. Patrick is believed to have died around 490 AD. There are many legends about him, including that he drove the snakes out of Ireland and used the shamrock to explain the Trinity. Ireland came to celebrate this day with religious services and feasts. American cities with large numbers of Irish immigrants staged the most extensive celebrations and elaborate parades. Boston held its first St. Patrick's Day parade in 1737, followed by New York City in 1762.
Wow.
And many cities across the U.S. joined and added traditions of their own, including Chicago, which has been dyeing its river green since 1962 to mark this holiday.
I love it. Do you like corned beef and cabbage?
We have it every year. I don't like it, but we have it.
Oh, you don't like corned beef at all?
No, it's not my
It's
tea,
a fatty
my
piece
bag.
of meat. I do like cabbage. I'm telling you, though, I might make like corned beef sliders like I did with the pastrami sliders for the Super Bowl. I might have to do that again because that was freaking bomb. But it's going to be gorgeous today. So, I mean, I kind of want to just barbecue all weekend, right?
People in Ireland say that we celebrate St. Patrick's Day more in America than they do. It's
I'm
it's a thing here, but it's not really a thing there. So
yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all.
The luck of the Irish.
Exactly.
This report is sponsored by you, and we thank you
is.
for it. We are located at thenickymadoroshow.com. The Patreon and PayPal links are all there for you, and the Super Chat, Super Stickers are live for you as well. And I did see one come through. That was from Brian.
Yeah.
So thank you for the $18. What a nice thing to do to get us started today. So I'm Kim McAllister. This is The Nikki Maduro Show.
Thank you, Kim. And yeah, thank you to all the support both during and after the show. We really, really do appreciate it. I'm getting called out for talking crap about Aaron Rodgers. I don't like him. Yes, he did well with the Green Bay Packers. Not for the Jets. Sorry, he got injured immediatamente. But yeah. I'm a Niner fan. I will always talk crap about Aaron Rodgers. Always. Sorry, I just will. Okay, let's move on to something that, I don't know why it should be so controversial, but it is. And that, of course, is the idea to have a 4-day work week. Bernie Sanders is fighting for it. He actually, and I apologize, I don't have the video up right now. He got into it with a Fox News reporter in the hallway. She was trying to ask him about it and, how it's going to hurt businesses and nobody wants to work and blah, 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 blah. And it's not actually true because honestly, the data shows that having a 4-day work week really does make sense. So Bernie Sanders is saying basically that businesses, the top 1%, they are the ones that benefit from the very, very hard work of those who work 5, 6, 7 hours a day, sometimes overtime. Let me know in the comments. How do you feel? Now it's a 4-day work week of 32 hours. Okay. It's basically 8 hours a day, right? 8 hours a day for 4 days. It's 32 hours. It is not. And let me make sure that make this very, very clear. It is not like, oh, I'm going to work a 12-hour day or anything like that. It is literally a 4-hour week. So CNN, let me bring up the video right now. CNN was talking with kind of this data scientist about what exactly this would look like. So let me share the video with you, because again, United States, best country in the world. I don't know if we do this right.
Ridiculous. You want to pay this people the same amount of money to work less. And when you work less, you get less, and everything starts to fall down. You've looked at the numbers of where this has been tried. What happened?
Yeah, there was a great global experiment that was done a few years ago on, the 32-hour work week, 4-day work week. And you know what happened to the companies that did it? The revenue actually went up. The revenue went up significantly, went up 38%. And employers rated employee productivity a 9 out of 10. So the fact is...
Okay, I just want to pause right here. 38% is significant. Okay, we're not talking about single digits here. 38% of revenue went up, or revenue went up 38%, I should say. Productivity went up. I mean, just keep that in mind as you guys are mulling how you feel about this.
In these companies that tried it, it actually worked out pretty gosh darn well, Erin.
It's pretty amazing. I've been reading some of the studies about it. I mean, the reasons why people having other things in their lives and being able to be all in at work when they're there. That average American worker works more than many European workers, just on the average.
Listen to this.
How does U.S. work week, though, stack up around the world?
Yeah, this is interesting, right? We like to compare ourselves to, let's say, the United Kingdom, or let's say other European countries like France. And you'll say, okay, France and the UK on average, 29 hours per week. This includes full-time and part-time workers. But if you look at the U.S., 35. But Israel and South Korea actually work more than the United States do. So yes, if we compare ourselves to the Europeans, we work a lot more. But if you compare ourselves to other industrialized countries like those in the Middle East or those in the Far East, in fact, we actually work slightly less.
Okay, but I'm going to stop here. It's not as if we look at the UK and areas in Europe as if they're failing, right? That their businesses never succeed because they're just not working enough.
So will Bernie Sanders' bill pass?
You know what? I don't know if it will. Probably not. But I will say among the American public, it's actually something that's quite popular. The idea of a 4-day work week.
Oh, I'm sure.
It is quite popular. But it's not just 2/3 of overall. It's well more than 2/3 of Democrats, but even a majority of Republicans support a 4-day work week. So you have those Republicans in the Senate scoffing at them, but their people, their constituents are actually, you know what? This could work out pretty decent for us.
Okay. So again, is it more of this mentality of you have to work 40 hours, you have to work 5 days a week, or you're lazy, or it's like, get out of that way of thinking. The productivity is up, revenue is up. Why do we look at facts and data square in the face and say, yeah, but no, when it doesn't even serve us? Like, who doesn't want to just work 4 instead of 5 days?
So would that mean that our children's school day goes down to 4 days a week?
Well, why would it have to? Well, teachers, I guess. Yeah. I mean, why not?
Yeah. I mean,
Because-
and what
but
about,
again, it's like, why
is there
not go to
enough learning hours? And like,
But that's a mentality thing. It has to be 5 days a week or they're not learning. Why? Why isn't it 7 days then? If we really care about learning, why not send them to school 7 days a week? Why? Because we were
everyone
used
needs
to
a-
it. Because
everyone
we're
needs a
used to
break?
it. Well, yeah, but we're also used to the 5. It's as if we've trained ourselves. Now, I will say schooling could still happen, maybe longer days. I don't know. Teachers would need a break, right? Teachers already work after school hours, unpaid most of the time, right? So it's not as if everything needs to fall into this. That is a good question, though. Jim says, I leave my house at 9. I'm home by 2:30. That's nice. But he also boards dogs on the weekend. Ms. Organic, I've had a 4-day work week for 18 years, but now I work more because I work from home 7 days a week, at least an hour or 2 on the weekends. Yeah.
well, I love this one.
Oh,
Walnut Creek. We can't even pass the daylight savings bill. 32-hour work week. Come on.
That is so true, though. It's as if we want certain things. Like, I think everybody intellectually knows they could probably make it work if everybody did it. But the problem is, who doesn't do it? Or how does it really play out? Kim's example of school is a very good one, right? I mean, if teachers only go for 4 days, some parents might be concerned that there's a loss of learning.
Yeah.
Natalie says this would decimate the personal finances of low-wage workers who struggle to pay rent already. The point is they'd be paid the same, right? So whether you work 40 or 32, the pay that you're promised would be the same. I don't know how they would work that out for hourly workers versus salaried workers. That's another thing that would need to happen. Ms. Organic, as a single mom, my 4-day week and flex schedule allows me to participate in my kiddos' education, volunteer, Girl Scout leader, etc. Yeah, I mean that's awesome. Look, I'm for it because I really do think that when you have goals, right, as a manager, as a CEO for your employees, that is the job. It's not, I need to sit my butt, even though everything's going to the wayside, because there's this mentality that I have to be here 8 hours a day for 5 days a week. But if you tell me, look, I need you to do X, Y, and Z in whatever time span you can get this done between now and then, good. I will be productive because I want the rest of my life back. And that's what I kind of lean towards. Whether it's 32 hours, whether it's 20 hours, what is my goal? What is my job entail? If I get that done in 15 hours or 50 hours, that's on me. And I wish that we had more of that mentality, but we don't. We're like, no, it doesn't matter if you could get your job done in 32. I still want you here for 40 because I think that means you're working hard.
I guess the question would be, would it be, are they going to pile so much work on someone where you only have a certain amount of hours to get it done? And it's this expectation that's not realistic, that you can't possibly
get it all done,
do all that work in that short amount of time. And so then what happens,
Yeah, I guess that would matter. What kind of job are you talking about? I think there are certain jobs. If I'm a surgeon in a heart surgery, heart transplant takes a certain number of hours. There's no clocking out, you know what I mean? So that doesn't work. But if, for instance, I'm in data entry, let's say, and I've got to input a certain number of papers into the computer. If I can get that done in a shorter amount of time, why should I not be allowed to leave to live the rest of my life? That's my point. Those sorts of jobs I think matter. And so yeah, I feel like we just need to really rethink how we feel about work and what the workday looks like. That's just what I think. I don't know. I mean, Janet says it's easy to fix the hourly wage for a 4-day work week. I used to do it for our employees who worked 3 12s and 4 10s. Our employees loved working the 4-10 shift. Yeah. People want their life back.
When I worked at a hospital, when I was going to school.
Right.
I used to do that. So it would be, we had 12-hour shifts.
Yeah.
And and that was fine for me. And I actually really liked it because you could stack it so that you would do 3 one week and 4 the next, and you could do them all in a row. And then you got big old time off in between. And I mean, once I'm at work, I'm at work. Right.
Exactly.
And so might as well just get it all done, even if it's a 12-hour workday. And then you get, a bigger chunk of time off. And it feels like, I don't know, it feels like you have more life to live.
Thank you. And I think that's what people desire, right?
Yeah.
I want to be able to afford my life outside of work. So when I'm at work, I will do a good job. I will stay focused. I will do whatever goals and meet whatever goals I need to in whatever job I happen to be doing. But when I'm off, let me be off, right? And if there's a way for me to have more of that off time and yet still, fulfill my commitment to the company, not be lazy or whatever, then let's do that. But we're so locked in. And, 5 is arbitrary. It really is. We as human beings have Saturday and Sunday are the end of the week, right? It's just... And I understand that humans as a species need some sort of rules and regulations, or it's chaos, right? I mean, just look at the streets, right? It is sort of weird if you think about it, that a light turns red and we as human beings must stop. We could just keep going. It's not like there's, it's not like we're, struck down by God or anything, but we have to have controls. We have to have rules. We have to have laws. It keeps things sane. But this idea that we have to work 5 days a week or it's going to be chaotic, I just think is ridiculous. Mama 3 Boys says, how about getting paid your full hours as long as you finish your work? My brother's a garbage man. He gets paid his full day, even if he finishes his route early. Exactly. If I could do it, and not every job's going to be like that. It's not like the teacher can be like, finish grading the papers. Sorry, kids, I'm out. You have to finish the job. So it
Yeah.
doesn't work in every instance, but I think in a lot of cases it could.
Can you imagine if that actually happened and we were, workers were given this treat? I mean, that would be amazing, but it will never happen because
I don't think it'll ever happen either.
we
It's fun to
don't-
talk about, though.
We value companies, right? I mean, we always side with companies. We don't side with the worker, and so I don't have high hopes.
No,
for that.
I don't think Bernie Sanders' bill is going to pass, but it's fun to dream and it's fun to really look at. And I will say this, if I was the CEO of a company and I could make it work and my productivity and my revenue went up,
Right.
I'd consider it, but it would have to come from the top down. I don't think from Washington. Does that make sense? So, maybe you could find a company that believes in the 4-day work week. Go work for them.
Chris says, yeah, I have that kind of job. I finish, I go home with a full day's pay whenever you finish, right?
There you go.
Get it
How
done, you get
awesome
it
would
done.
that be? That's what I like. All right. Well, let's introduce a woman that never gets any time off. No, I'm just kidding. But she's a friend of the show. She works for the editorial board for the San Francisco Chronicle. Emily Hoven. Thank you so much, friend, for coming back on the show.
Of course. Thanks for having me. Long time no see.
I know your background looks a bit different because for everyone that doesn't know, Emily was living in Sacramento. She has officially moved to San Francisco. And I guess let's start off with this this personal story you shared, and then we'll get to Proposition 1 after. Emily moved to San Francisco, and I'm going to let you tell the story, but you quickly learned how ridiculous things, laws, rules can be in the city of San Francisco.
Yes. So I moved here last month, so it's still really new to me and exciting. And I've been loving living in the city so far. But yeah, there are certain hurdles that I encountered almost immediately. And one of them was the super simple task of just getting a permit to park my moving van. Because so when I was in Sacramento, when I moved there, when I left there, I didn't have to get a permit. Like it's super chill. It's like more residential. There's enough space. So it never really even crossed my mind that I would need to do that. And then my parents were like, well, you might need to get a place to like reserve a spot for your van. And I'm like, that's probably true. So then by the time that I realized this, it was maybe like a week or so before I was actually going to move. So I was Googling around and, I came across this website that is managed by the city's transit agency. And it was so confusing to me to even understand what that site was talking about in the first place. I'm like, is this the right
Is this real? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, is this the right area? But the long and the short of it was, from what I could deduce, was that you could apply for a permit, but it required at least 5 business days worth of processing time between the date of application and the date of enforcement. So not including those days. So that is more than a week when you add it all up, because it's only 5 business days in a week. Not only that, it cost a minimum of $320 for the permit. And if you were going to be in a metered area, it would be another $16 per meter per day.
Wow.
And I was like, I don't even know if a moving van takes up one space or more than one space. Like it's very unclear, like how many things you would actually have to apply for. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, so that's going to be like $350+ to literally park my van for like 30 minutes or an hour.
Yeah.
And the thing that's crazy is like, it's not even guaranteed that it's going to be like right in front of your building. It's wherever they can kind of fit you in compared to like other permits that have been issued and things like that. So I was sort of like, does it even make sense to do this? Because even if I go through this process, first of all, I don't even have, like, I'm not even going to be able to meet the deadline for this in terms of the time, because it's not, I have less than a week. But even if I could, should I actually pay that much? I mean, because renting a U-Haul costs like $30 and another $30 if you want to insure it. Like, it's so cheap. It's insane. And so basically my family and I, we kind of decided to just take our risks and double park, because also when we had been touring different apartments, we saw a ton of people doing that. Yeah, it was like really customary.
Exactly.
People take up a whole lane on the street, like a lane of actual traffic. They just throw some cones out and we're good. Call it good.
Yeah, like we were noticing that, and we were seeing like the UPS truck or the mail truck, like everyone just kind of parks in the middle, puts their blinkers on, and like does what they need to do.
Yeah.
So we were like, okay, we'll post someone as a sentry to kind of guard and make sure that, you know, no one breaks into the van, and also that there isn't some sort of enforcement coming on. And if there is, we'll move the truck. But we ended up double parking, and the hilarious irony of it was literally right as we pulled up, another moving van pulled up right in front of us and did the exact same thing.
Right.
So I was like, what the heck? And so essentially I decided to write a piece just kind of explaining.
Admitting that you are not following the rules, which I love.
I know, I felt so guilty. And like, you know, even when I was talking to, because I talked to the transit agency, and I'm like, look, like, I'm not someone that, you know, enjoys or makes a habit of breaking the rules. Like, I don't, you know, and that's the whole purpose of the piece that I wrote, is that I think generally speaking, most people are going to want to abide by the rules, right? Like if there's a permit, they're going to get a permit. But when it's so much time and so much money to do the right thing, it incentivizes people that even have like the most pure of intentions to try to circumvent the rules. And, you know, a lot of readers pointed out to me that the fine for double parking is only $108. So it's like basically 1/3 the cost of the permit. So why
just break the law then?
So why would you get the permit? Like, and this is, you know, it does not make any sense. And, you know, the transit agency was like, well, you know, it's the cost of the enforcement and the materials and the labor and all of this stuff. But
no one's going to do that. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And then I'm like, but the signs are literally like paper that they just like zip tied to a tree. Like, how expensive is that? You know what I mean? And then also, it was clear to me in talking with them that there are a lot of ways they can make that process more efficient and thereby reduce staff time and thereby lower the cost. Because, for example, they were telling me that a lot of their workers have to spend a fair amount of time basically going back and forth with people and explaining the process, and people will submit the wrong application because, again, the website is so confusing that it's not really clear which permit you need to apply for, how far in advance you need to, because they have different timelines, different things, different like caveats. And so I'm like, well, I think if the website was made a lot more clear, you probably wouldn't get as many incomplete or invalid applications. People would have fewer questions. And yeah, I see the comment there. And I actually got so many reader responses to this article, which I did not expect at all. Like I opened my inbox and my email was like blowing up with people like full of frustration and having their own like horrible stories that my editor and I were like, well, maybe we should just do a follow-up piece kind of outlining some of those experiences and just talking to talking to some politicians and see what things they might do to address this issue. But I think my favorite story that I got from a reader that was what would have probably had me pulling my own hair out of my head was this one woman got a permit to put her moving van in front of her building. The signs were put up. She paid the $320. She got it up there. So she gets there on the day of the move and someone has torn the signs down because as I mentioned, it's paper. It's like you can easily tear it off or whatever.
Right.
So people had done that so that they could park their own car in that spot. Right.
Right.
So then she calls MTA, the transit agency, and she's like, someone tore down my signs. Like I can't park my van. So then they send out this parking enforcement officer and they're like, well, we can't tow the car because there's no sign reserving the spot. And she's like, no, they tore down the signs. Like, that's exactly why I called you. And they were like, well, we can't tow it because there's no proof that like you reserved this.
Oh my.
She was like, wait, what? And so then finally she called them back and she was like the cars are still here. So then 2 hours later, she said, they finally sent someone to post new signs. But at that point, I mean, 2 hours, she had already had to park somewhere else and do the move that way.
Right.
So she was like, I paid the money and I didn't even get the product and I didn't get the refund. And then someone was telling me that they couldn't tow the car because there was no proof that my signs were there. She's like, but that's
oh my God. Yeah.
So frustrating.
I mean, is this giving you pause to move to San Francisco, Emily? Because this is what you are going to have to deal with. You know that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I definitely did not expect it to happen so soon when I got here. I mean, it was before I even got here, you know, and at first I was kind of like, maybe I'm being a bit of like a crybaby about this. Like maybe this is a little thing. But the more I talked with folks in the city, the more I realized that these are the exact like little quality of life things that they keep piling up. And sooner or later, you have people who are so fed up because the most simple things are so complicated. There's no reward for doing the right thing. And like many readers told me that they did pay that permit, which they were shocked that it was that much, but they were like, you know what, I want to do it. I'm going to follow the rules. They get to their building and their landlord's like, oh, like you didn't need to do that. You could have just double parked. Like no one actually takes it seriously. And so it makes it difficult to like have faith in that process. And I think especially when there are stories of obviously, people, selling drugs on the street or living on the street. And then MTA also for years, as the Chronicle kind of exposed, was wandering around ticketing stolen cars and charging the owner of the car for the ticket, even though the cars had been stolen. So it's like this backward system where it seems that following the rules is actually punished in a lot of ways, or you're made to feel like you're kind of a sucker because everyone says, no, you don't actually need to do that. Like, it's
like, why did you waste all that money doing that? You did not need to do that.
It's like no good deed goes unpunished kind of a thing is like really the vibe that I got from a bunch of readers that reached out to me. And I actually just got another email this morning from a woman who told me that they had, again, reserved a permit for their moving van. And then apparently the city had also double booked them with another permit. So at the same time in the same place for their own workers to like paint the curb a certain color. So the workers were like, well, you can't like park your van here. And they were like, no, like we need to move. Yeah. And so it's just, there's all of these things that seem like with the technology we have, with the resources we have, with being one of the richest, cities in the world, you would think we would have a system that kind of puts all of those things in some sort of database so that you don't double book. If someone says my signs have been torn down, they're not like, what signs?
Exactly. There'd be some sort of database, some cross-referencing. Right. You think the heart of Silicon Valley, Silicon Valley in and of itself would have the best websites, the clearest everything. Yes. And I think it's also really disappointing when you come face to face with the fact that that's not how it is. And I feel for you, Emily, because now you live in San Francisco. You're probably going to be encountering situations like this all the time.
Yeah, well, it will be interesting. And, I like, it's so funny because already I love living here so much. Like,
you do good.
In terms of like the vibrancy of the city, like it's there's so much going on. I feel like I've already had more of a social life in like 3 weeks here than I had in 4 years.
Wow.
In Sacramento. And I think part of that is due to COVID, and just kind of recovering from that. And just from being from the Bay Area, I just feel like there's more of a built-in like network here that I have. And obviously I'm going into the office and see my coworkers, which I couldn't do in Sacramento. So I definitely am not like a San Francisco hater, but what I do want to do is approach it from the angle of like, there's so many great things about the city, but we really need to like get back to basics here because things that are so simple. And again, the city is trying to lure people back. It's trying to lure businesses here. It's trying to lure residents back in. Those fees should not be so exorbitant because I mean, like that was a cost prohibitive fee for me, and it would be for many people. I mean, Absolutely. How could you pay that much for a couple? And the thing that doesn't even make any sense is a yearly parking permit is $170. So why is one for less than 24 hours double that cost? Like I logically do not understand it.
Yeah.
I think that's like kind of the motto of San Francisco. We logically don't understand it. All right, well, let's move on to Prop 1. And I'm so glad. Welcome to San Francisco. So glad you're in the Bay with us. Let's move on to Prop 1. The headline in your opinion piece is Proposition 1 is too close to call, even though the other side has conceded. I think even today, I think they're still counting the ballots. And you said Governor Newsom should never have left it to chance. And some people are saying, I never even saw any ads for Proposition 1. I feel like, and maybe it's because of our news bubble here, we talked about Proposition 1 a lot. I don't know if it's the algorithm with my Hulu. I saw Newsom's ads for Proposition 1. Kim, you said you never saw an ad for Proposition 1. One, obviously this other side has conceded it's looking like it's going to pass, but why do you feel like it was so close?
Yeah, well, there are a couple of reasons why I think Prop 1 is so close. This is basically like one of the centerpieces of the governor's strategy to overhaul the behavioral health system, get sickest people off the streets into housing, into mental health facilities. But so, on its face, that sounds like a good idea. And like, obviously we as an editorial board supported it. And there are a lot of reasons why we did support it. But I think for the average voter encountering this measure on their ballot, there are a couple of reasons that they would have kind of hesitated about it. And I mean, the measure is insanely complicated. It took up 68 pages in the state voter guide, which I think is a modern day record. And I believe the Secretary of State said added a cost of several $1 million to the election because they had to print all of those voter guides and send them out to people. So it's extremely complicated. I don't think anyone was sitting there reading through every single line of the statute, right? And part of the reason why it's so complex is because it amends a prior voter approved ballot measure that essentially raised a 1% tax on millionaires to fund county mental health services. And what the state is trying to do with these amendments is increase oversight of that spending and basically tell counties a lot more clearly how to spend that money, whereas in the past they had a lot more discretion, and the state wants more of that money to be used on housing people who are severely mentally ill and providing them with services, rather than of a focus on like prevention and early intervention, although that still will have funding. So it was super complex, and I think that was a big issue. I think the second issue was the other part of Prop 1, which in addition to those amendments, separately, it would authorize about a $6.4 billion bond that the state would use to create about 10,000 placements, either in behavioral health facilities that would have to be constructed or in permanent supportive housing for people who are mentally ill or using drugs and are homelessness or on the verge of homelessness. And I think that bond, in my estimation, was a big reason why people were very skeptical, because the reality is that California taxpayers have funneled more than $20 billion into homelessness, like in the past 5 years alone. And in that time, homelessness has only increased.
Yeah.
And we only seem to see more and more people on the streets who are in crisis. And I think there's a very, very strong sense of skepticism and dissatisfaction and distrust that any more money given to the government for this issue is going to actually make a difference, because, why has it not in the past? And so I think those were some of the biggest reasons why. And I think thirdly, all of those ads that some people did see were very heavily like Newsom focused and Newsom branded. And this was Newsom's initiative, and he had $12 million from his own campaign funds that he was using to promote the measure. The opponents had literally no money at all, like $2,000. So they had no ads whatsoever. But I think Newsom might have overestimated what his endorsement would mean for voters, because his approval rating right now among Californians is actually the lowest it's been since he assumed the governorship. Wow. And so I don't think people are necessarily like, oh, Newsom likes it, therefore I like it too. Right. So I think that's it. And I think, again, when voters are confused by something, they're far more likely to vote no than they are to vote yes. And so my argument with this whole thing was that I support the idea of what Prop 1 is trying to do. What I think they should have done is, I think that $6.4 billion should have been addressed in the past several budget cycles. Because if you'll remember, California had record-breaking surpluses. Last year and the year before, it was about $100 billion. They did use some of that money. They did use several $1 billion to funnel it towards behavioral health. However, they have also described Prop 1 as the linchpin of their behavioral health strategy. So my argument was, if it is indeed so central to your strategy and so necessary to make all the other components of that strategy work, why wouldn't that have not been a funding priority when you had a surplus? Why would you have not allocated another $6.4 billion when you had all that money at your disposal, rather than ask voters for that money when we're in the middle of a sizable deficit, which some are estimating upwards of $70 billion. And it's going to cost more money than it would have had you done it that way, because now that it's bonds, we're going to have to issue debt, and it's going to cost an additional $310 million annually for 30 years. So it is less cost effective and it is more uncertain than it would have been when you had the money, you actually put it towards that goal, which I think that they should have done because it's a goal that I support. We clearly need those facilities. We clearly need more placements. So my beef was not with the measure in as much as it was with the governor's way of handling it. And I think that it really goes down to how Democrats have addressed the budget deficit in Sacramento. I sort of feel like the past several years, there were a lot of warning signs that the economy was not going to, stay in that mode forever. There were reports saying, okay, yes, we're in a good space now, but we have a very volatile, tax base and stock market, like things are going to go down. We're going to be in a deficit. Lawmakers knew this, but they still allocated so much money to things that, and at the same time, they're like asking for more money. And I feel like, and for example, in November, they're going to be putting billions of dollars of bonds on the ballot for climate, for housing, for education, various other things. And they're actually haggling right now over what's going to make the ballot because they can sense that voters' appetites are not super high to approve bonds. Anyway, so I just think Democrats have not been responsible. I think they've wanted to have their cake and eat it too. And I think instead of making tough choices when they had a lot of money, they're pushing off the hard decisions.
Yeah.
And I think that it's only going to make a lot of things more difficult. And one last note I'll say about why the measure is so close right now is I think part of it had to do with the fact that it's in the primary election. And we know that the primaries tend to be lower turnout. They tend to skew a little bit more conservative than the general election. And so I think that, Newsom was trying to kind of clear the plate. There were actually other measures that were going to be on this ballot, and he steamrolled lawmakers and convinced them to push it to November so that no one would be distracted and everyone would just be focused on Prop 1. But again, the turnout is going to skew a little bit more conservative and a little bit lower turnout. And so that's going to also decrease the margin. So there were a lot of things that I think kind of backfired for him. But I think the biggest issue in my mind is the lack of fiscal responsibility and wanting to, use every single dollar of the surplus and then keep asking the voters for more money. It's like you had the money, and instead you are asking us to pay even more when we could have done what we're trying to do and saved billions of dollars in the process.
I just feel like, I agree with everything you're saying. I wonder also the nuts and bolts and the details of Proposition 1, making sure that the human infrastructure that we constantly talk about is going to be there. Are you optimistic now that it looks like it is going to pass, that we're going to see significant improvement in the homelessness, in the mental health crisis? Because a lot of people, and they've been saying it in the comments, they're worried about taking away money from counties doing this.
Yeah.
I always respond, look, it's been getting worse. I remember vividly, was it last year or the year before, Newsom saying, these nonprofits, I'm not giving you any more money. It's gotten worse the more money I've given you. And that's also true. I'm concerned that going from the top, from the state down, loses a little bit of the nuance that's involved county to county in dealing with the problem, because the situation in San Jose and San Francisco is different than it might be in smaller counties.
Absolutely. And I think that is one of the biggest concerns that is there with the measure is the state is going to be increasing oversight. It's going to be taking a slightly bigger portion of the money to kind of administer oversight and also to invest in workforce development for that healthcare workforce that we do need so desperately. It's a difficult thing to weigh because we don't know what this is going to look like once it comes out. And I know a lot of folks have been telling me we don't even actually understand fully the implications of what this is going to mean for our counties, especially because there are so many other things happening at the same time. For example, CalAIM, the state's massive transformation of its Medi-Cal healthcare program for low-income Californians. They're totally overhauling that. So for example, now Medi-Cal will pay for 6 months of transitional housing because it's considered like a healthcare expense. So there's all of these shifts that are ongoing, and how all of those are going to intersect and interlock, I think, is very much TBD. But I do think that for me, when I look at our current situation, I think it would be a mistake to think that continuing down the exact same path that we've been on for the past several decades with MHSA, that the things that's been reformed with Prop 1. I mean, the results have not gotten better, unfortunately. And I'm not necessarily blaming any specific group of people for that, like counties or local nonprofits. But I do think that when the state kind of decentralized a lot of its operations, whether it was from the state prisons down to the county jails, from the state hospitals down to these, local behavioral health centers that oftentimes didn't even materialize due to lack of funding. When it did that with mental health, I mean, that used to be really handled at the state level. And then there was kind of this realignment down to the county level. There's pros and cons of that. And the pro is obviously the counties have a bit more flexibility. They can tailor it a little bit more. The con is that I sort of feel like every county can also define things in its own way and move in its own direction. And those directions may not be like mutually compatible in some ways. And I do think there needs to be an overarching strategy and goalposts that we're trying to, as a state, move toward. And there should be flexibility within those parameters. But I do think that generally speaking, like there needs to be like, I don't want to say a top-down direction, but there needs to be a clear
leader,
vision. And I don't know that we've had that as a state for the past several decades. And I think part of it is because the state was abdicating responsibility and it didn't want to be held accountable, right? It wanted to say, if homelessness is increasing, it's the county's fault. Well, now that the state is taking more of a leadership role, they're also going to be held more accountable. And I think that that's really important because we can say, look, like you said you were going to step in and you were going to do this. And if you're not delivering, well, that's also your problem too.
Yeah, exactly. And it's going to fall on Governor Newsom as well. And I know he's not running for re-election, but obviously he has bigger political aspirations that are going to follow him as well. Emily Hovind with the San Francisco Chronicle editorial board. Read both of her articles, including the one on her parking fiasco. It's in the show notes. I love it. I love your writing. We love your analysis. Can't wait to get you back on the show. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye. Bye. Yeah, she's awesome.
And I'm so
both
glad
of those stories are just such epitome of San Francisco and California as a whole, right?
It feels good to have her in San Francisco, though, right?
It does, and I'm glad that
she's a part of the fabric now.
Because she went from, for those of you that remember, she was at Cal Matters, and then she got the job at the Chronicle, and then of course, COVID and remote work and all those sorts of things. So yeah, she's gonna have, I imagine, Kim, a lot of those types of articles similar to the parking one. Now that you're in San Francisco and you get to experience both the good, the bad, and the in-between face to face. So, all right, let's do a few headlines. Tim Sika's going to join us in a couple of minutes, but let's see what else is going on with him.
Now, from around the world to up your street, the Nikki Maduro Show presents News Czar Kim McAllister.
There she is, DA Fani Willis.
There she is.
In Fulton County, a Georgia judge scolding her for a tremendous lapse in judgment.
Tisk, tisk.
That's what the judge said. However, he is allowing Willis to remain on former President Trump's election interference case if the special prosecutor, Nathan Wade, is removed. The judge said there was no actual conflict due to the romantic relationship between Willis and Wade. Sad situation in Ohio. Officials say a tornado there killed at least 3 people and multiple injuries were caused by this tornado in Indiana as well. A total of 5 tornadoes were confirmed in Ohio. A tornado also damaged at least 50 structures in a small northern Kentucky town right near the Indiana border. So loss of life, loss of property because of these storms. A group of female college students suing the NCAA over its policies surrounding transgender athletes. The suit mostly centers around the transgender swimmer, Aaliyah Thomas, winning the 2022 NCAA Women's Swimming National Championship. Thomas, who is not named as a defendant in the suit, had competed as a male swimmer for 3 years at the University of Pennsylvania before transitioning to female. Again, this group of female college student athletes suing the NCAA over the policy surrounding transgender athletes.
This is going to come to a head, I think, sooner rather than later. I really do foresee it coming rather quickly because there has to be a middle ground here. There has to be a compromise. It can't be all or nothing, in my opinion.
I'm a little worried because Julia's taking a band trip to New York, and they're going to be riding the subway. And a
Okay.
rash of subway violence continues to
Oh.
plague New York City's subway system. A man is in critical condition after being shot in the head on a subway train in downtown Brooklyn yesterday afternoon. The victim rushed to the hospital in critical condition, the alleged shooter taken into custody. So they're still trying to beef up security there with extra, officers everywhere.
Yeah.
It's a bad scene.
Well, I mean, so what are you telling her?
There's a lot of rules. I've got this whole pamphlet. It's right in front of me here
Okay.
about, sticking together and how to keep your stuff on you. Airplane,
Yeah.
subway, and bus rules, they say.
Yeah, I went
No,
when I went to
yeah.
New York, the subway system, I will tell you, if none of you have ever been to New York and experienced the subway, it's so good. I will say this. I mean, obviously this notwithstanding the bad news around that, but just getting around New York through the subway system, it's really, really well done. I will say, when you know where you're going and what you're catching. But for New Yorkers that know it, it's the only way to travel around the city.
Here's what they say. Students will be assigned to a chaperone in groups of 6 for subway rides.
Okay.
Always stay with your chaperone during a subway ride.
Of course.
Pay attention, get on and off when your chaperone does. If you don't get off in time, or stay on the platform until a chaperone returns from you.
Uh-huh.
If you don't get on or off in time, get off at the next stop and wait on a platform for a chaperone.
Yeah.
Communicate by phone. So they're trying to keep these kids safe, but still I worry,
Yeah, absolutely. I would be too. So
I'm a little concerned about that. I mean, I see every day a story after story about, what happens on New York subways. And I'm like, I'm sending my kid to New York with a band chaperone.
Yeah, but it's going to be
Yeah.
so good for her. And that's just so exciting for Julia. So congratulations to her.
I didn't tell you this, but it's so funny. This is her goal. This is what's
Okay.
her dream. They have the school band, and there's only one person who's selected to be the what do you call it? God,
Band leader?
no, it's the drum major.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So this person stands out in front, basically leading the group, right?
Okay.
They pick what the marches are. They lead the group, what have you.
Okay.
And they get to wear a different outfit. It's the kilt.
Ah,
And you have to carry a
nice.
staff and twirl it around. Kind of like you're, the conductor of the band, right?
Okay.
She was asked yesterday by her band leader to be the drum major for the next 3 years.
Wow.
I know, she's really excited. Really excited.
That is
Yeah.
so, I mean, because everybody knows she's a freshman right now. So for the rest of her high school career,
Yeah, she gets to be the drum major.
that is awesome.
Isn't it?
Congratulations to Julia. That is amazing.
So I guess enough of me bragging. Let's move on to what's going
Never
on.
enough. Never enough.
Never enough. Let's go on to Alameda County. They had all of these signatures collected to recall the district attorney,
Right.
Pamela Price. They now have to be recounted by hand. The registrar of voters received 123,374 signatures in support of this petition to recall Price. The registrar of voters says it did a count of these signatures using this system where they randomly sample the signatures, verify them, and do it that way. The results of the random sampling are not sufficient to determine whether the signature threshold to call for the re-election has been met. So now they have to do it all by hand with a manual recount of all these signatures. Now they only need 73,195 and more than 123,000 turned in. So the chances are good that it's going to work out.
Right.
But,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay.
But now they have to do it all by hand. Can you imagine having to
No.
count 123,000 signatures by hand,
No.
compare it, and make sure everything is on the up and up?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a lot of time. Lastly, because I know we have Tim Seco waiting in the wings, look at that. That is
Oh, for St.
Chicago.
Patty's Day?
The Windy City is the best place in the U.S. to celebrate St. Patrick's Day this Sunday. That according to tripping.com, which ranked Chicago, then Boston, and Philadelphia first, second, and third, placing fourth, the smallest of the top 7 cities, Dublin, Ohio. But this is how they, in Chicago, turn the river green.
How do you feel about that? I mean, I think it's pretty cool. Some people are like, no, you shouldn't be doing that. It looks terrible. I'm like, you guys are party
I
poopers.
just wonder if it's environmentally sound.
I'm
Like
sure it is. They do it all the time. I'm sure it's just like
what
something.
kind of crazy ass chemicals do you have to dump in to turn it that color?
I mean, there has to be something that's okay for the water and the wildlife or the fish.
And are
or
the
whatever.
fish like, what is happening to us right now?
Do they even see it? Sometimes I love when like human beings explain how like fish or animals. I'm like, maybe you're wrong. I don't know.
Yeah.
Are they talking to you? I have no idea. But I think it's festive. I don't know. It's kind of cool. It's better than bubbles or something, that's really harming everything.
Oh, I did have one more story for you guys. And it's about Easter shopping.
Okay.
Consumer spending is expected to reach more than $22 billion this Easter.
Do you still do baskets, or does the Easter Bunny still come with baskets for the kids?
Yeah. The annual survey by the National Retail Federation says 81% of Americans plan to celebrate Easter this year. They plan to spend an average of $177 per person, and will spend the most on food, followed by clothing, and then gifts.
The Easter Bunny's not spending $177 on a basket. That's for damn sure. Food though, hell yeah. Although this year I'm going to my mom, so I'll just probably bring an appetizer or something like that. So
for the family celebration.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Exactly. You got to celebrate. It's nice.
This report is sponsored by you, which means we rely on you to help us keep this Nikki Maduro show on the subway, as it were. Please find us at thenikkimaduroshow.com, thenikkimaduroshow.com, and of course the PayPal, Patreon, or the Super Chat, Super Sticker open here on YouTube. I'm Kim McAllister. This is The Nikki Maduro Show.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you. All right, since it's Friday, we know we have to do it. We love to do it. What do I need to watch? Well, there's one person to ask, and that is our friend Tim Sika. Hello, my friend.
Hi, ladies. I like how you said we have to do it.
We have to. I have to know what I'm going to watch.
We must.
I have
we
to.
Must.
I have not seen Dune still. I'm kicking myself. It's making me upset. Since I wasn't here.
Well, there's time. There's time to see it. It's going to play for a while.
Time.
Yeah.
Really quickly, though, I want to tell you, I saw a movie that was not very good.
What was that?
Although my son kind of liked it because he doesn't really like scary movies that much. Imaginary. I don't know if you sat through that.
You know what? I was supposed to see it, and a series of mishaps kept me from. And I was telling a colleague, it sounds like I dodged a bullet with that one, and you're confirming that. Yeah.
I mean, for someone who loves horror movies, it was fine for my 12-year-old who doesn't like. He's getting into scary movies. It wasn't gory. It was stupid. But yeah, that gets a thumbs up.
That's what I'm hearing from everybody. I'm kind of glad. I'll skip it. Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. Well, let's see what we should watch. How about One Life with Anthony Hopkins?
Yeah, with anti-Semitism on the rise in this country and immigration being such a hot topic, this movie, One Life, is very topical. It's a topical historical drama. It stars Anthony Hopkins. It's based on the true story of this British humanitarian, Sir Nicholas Winton. Apparently, this guy's super famous, but I'm being introduced to him in this movie. He's referred to by some, like historians, and by some people who knew him, as the British Oscar Schindler. He plays a British stockbroker, Nicholas Hinton, who in 1938, against all these odds, helped hundreds of Jewish children in German-occupied Czechoslovakia to escape the Nazis just before the beginning of World War II. He had to get them all together and get them on trains to England, which was still a neutral part of Europe at that time. And it's a very good movie. It's very straightforward. It's an interesting history. It's got a hugely emotional, satisfyingly emotional payoff. Great acting by Hopkins. Johnny Flynn plays the younger version of Anthony Hopkins in this movie, because the story goes back and forth in time from the 1930s in Germany, when the Third Reich began its European invasion, to present day England. And it's a solid, effective drama, but it's also a timely reminder that, for me, I kept thinking about this, that in the midst of some really horrible human behavior, where you just think, man, this is we are done. It's a reminder that goodness and caring and simple human decency can also emerge from, these horrible situations. So good movie and effective and affecting human drama. And it opens in theaters today.
That is good. All right, let's go to Mark Wahlberg. This is for dog lovers, which I now consider myself one. Arthur the King.
Yeah, wait a minute here.
Okay.
I'm going to open up here. because I feel like I can open up to you
Yes,
two ladies.
please, lay it
If you were two men, I wouldn't be doing this. But I have little objectivity about this movie because I love dogs too, Nikki. So this movie truly, madly, deeply captured my heart.
Oh, good.
I mean, it's yet another based on a true story movie, like One Life. It's about this sportsman guy and a dog who found each other during this adventure race in Ecuador. Now, I never heard of these adventure races before, but they're basically these like team races which cover days and weeks sometimes, where these small teams of people, they navigate over an unmarked wilderness course. And they can be very dangerous, these courses, and long and surprising to the people participating because the participants don't always know what they're going to encounter. Anyway, this is the story of one guy and his team who are basically followed on this crazy adventure race by this wounded dog who the group, and in particular this guy, played by Mark Wahlberg, becomes attached to.
Oh.
And Wahlberg plays this fictionalized version of this Swedish athlete who wrote a memoir, which the film is based on. It's called Arthur the Dog Who Crossed a Jungle to Find a Home, which apparently has been translated into dozens of languages. I'm going to try to and get a hold of the book because I really like this movie.
Oh.
But it's a quintessential family movie. It tries hard to avoid the sugary approach that maybe Disney might have employed, although it couldn't help but land on some of the cliches of these animal movies. And this is clearly a Hollywood version, I think, playing a bit fast and loose with some of the facts. But that said, what this movie captured so well was that thing about a dog. I know, Nikki, you can be able to relate to this, who becomes attached to its owner. There's something about the way a dog can look at a human face that makes me friggin' melt. And this movie captured that so effectively without pounding you over the head with it. And when the movie was over, I wanted that dog. I wanted that dog. It's a tearjerker. But
there was an article about Mark Wahlberg. Apparently, he's allergic to dogs, even though he has 4. He takes medication, and he wanted to adopt this dog too. I read that.
Yeah. Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't see that article. But anyway, it's a real feel-good movie. If you're a dog lover, I mean, you got to see this. I mean, or if you're a parent looking for something good to watch with your kids.
It's not It's not a talking dog movie, is it?
No, right?
No.
Okay.
No. And in fact, I doubt I don't know this for a fact, but from the way it looked, and I've seen so many CGI dog movies, they didn't use CGI at all in this movie. This dog was like there on the set, the long shots and everything, and just I'm sure it was, although I can't vouch for that for sure, but oh my God, no.
Such a good movie. And it's in theaters?
It's in theaters. It's going to capture the hearts of, I think, most people who see it. It definitely captured mine. Oh, God, I was a basket case. And you know what? I was lucky because I saw it at a screening. I was one of 3 people there, and I sat in the last row in the corner so nobody could see me weep.
I love my weepy movies, so I have to go see this. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So
It
King
goes on the list.
Arthur the King, it is on the list. All right. This one, the American Society of Magical Negroes, you describe as a comedy satire.
Yeah, I love this title. The movie, not so much, but I really, really wanted to like this movie. As you said, it's a comedy satire. It's based on the magical Negro trope, which is used in a lot of Hollywood movies and books and TV, which is kind of best defined, I guess, as like the magical Negro is usually like a supporting player in a story or in a movie about white people who have this like special insight and who usually at their own peril come to the aid of the white character or characters in the story whose sole purpose, really story-wise, is just to make the white characters feel better before they, go to the electric chair or whatever. and in this case, the word Negro is like a throwback to racial stereotypes. I think that's what they were going for in this movie. Spike Lee, in fact, I think it was around 2001 on one of his college lecture tours, he popularized the term, lamenting that Hollywood still used the premise in some of their movies like The Green Mile and like The Legend of Bagger Vance and those kinds of movies. Although we rarely see much of this today, thank God. Hollywood is changing a little bit more and getting a little more aware of that whole trope. Anyway, Oh gosh. I think I get what this movie was trying to do, which was to make us laugh and look at our own prejudices and, how many Black people's lives and how they walk through their lives have been shaped by how they've been viewed and treated in a predominantly white society. And the movie's amusing enough, but I think overall, as satire, it kind of lacks what I always think is necessary for a good satire, like a necessary satiric punch that would kind of knock you sideways. It's a gentle film. It's like a tender film. You can almost call it sweet, but I think it's too gentle and too tender and too sweet for my money to have any kind of impact that I think that the filmmakers were going for. In other words, as satire, it lacks like the kind of weight that like a Jordan Peele satire on race has, like a movie like Get Out.
Okay.
Get Out kind of like makes you laugh, but also kind of you feel like you're getting slapped in the face in a good way. And in fact, it almost does, or to me, it almost seems to be doing what the movie itself seems to be complaining about, which is that it tiptoed around making white audiences uncomfortable. And I think it should have made white audiences uncomfortable. It didn't make me feel uncomfortable. And I don't think it does do that. I don't think it works as a statement movie either. It kind of just lays there on the screen. It was mildly amusing to its credit, but its plot resolutions left you with like little to contemplate. I give the movie an A for an idea, but maybe a C+ for the final
execution.
product.
All right.
Yeah, kind of meh, just meh. And it looks so promising. I thought, ooh, that's a great title, and the premise looked good. The trailer was good too, but no,
it didn't work. All right.
No,
okay.
sorry.
Well, we have a couple of documentaries that you watched as well. One is Frida.
Yes, a new documentary directed by Carla Gutierrez, and it's about the life of, you see her right there, Mexican painter Frida Kahlo, and it premiered at Sundance this year. It won an award for its editing, and based on the film's results, it was a very deserving win for film editing. And there was a very good narrative movie about the life of Frida Kahlo in 2002. It was directed by Julie Taymor, and it starred Selma Hayek, who was nominated for a Best Actress Oscar. She was great in that. Yeah, she was kind of, in a way, she was like too beautiful to play Frida. I mean, Selma Hayek, she's
tell me about it, right?
My God, I interviewed her a couple times, and she is so friggin' stunning.
Yeah.
I mean, she's so in person, she's 10 times more beautiful than she's on screen. Anyway, this documentary, in a way, is I think superior to that movie, mostly because I think biographies in general are more suited to the documentary form. And this is an excellent movie. It pretty much contains everything you need to know, or that you would want to know, or that you already thought you knew about the life of Frida Kahlo, as told by the lady herself through her own words and her writings and interviews. Great archival footage here. I've never seen some of this footage with Frida, and the animation is beautiful. There's a lot of animation which kind of emphasize the colors of her paintings, and her relationship with muralist Diego Rivera is gone into in detail here. Their marriage and their remarriage, all the high points of her life, her tragic streetcar accident when she was like only 18, which pretty much left her in pain for the rest of her life, but did kind of trigger her creativity. It's all fascinating stuff, even if you already know about her.
Nice. And this one is on Amazon Prime. So if people
it is on Amazon Prime beginning. What is today? Friday. Beginning today. Yeah, beginning today. Yeah. So it's pretty much everything good or great that you can say about it is this movie. Yeah.
All right, and now something for a little different, a little spicier.
San Francisco based.
Yeah.
Carol Doda, Topless at the Condor.
Yeah, this is a new documentary, and it's a special treat for Bay Area filmgoers because the setting is San Francisco. The place is the North Beach nightclub, The Condor, and the subject is a San Francisco cocktail waitress who became one of the city's most popular entertainers after making her debut at the Condor as America's first topless and then later bottomless, which is a whole nother story, dancer. She famously she would appear on stage on top of this white baby grand piano that would descend from the sky, and then it would come down on the stage and she would go into her thing. And the story begins in 1964, when such things like topless dancers were hardly even spoken of, let alone an actual reality. It's directed by Bay Area filmmakers Marlo McKenzie and Jonathan Parker. And it's Carol Doda, Topless of the Condour. It's another great title, telling you exactly what you're in store for. And it's entertaining. It's exciting. It's a biopic. It's a cultural time capsule. It's a portrait of San Francisco in the mid-1960s, before the summer of love became like a thing. So it's about sex, and it's about sexual liberation, obviously feminism, and the impact that this really colorful and very intelligent and very funny lady, Carol Doda, and her topless dancing at the Condor nightclub impacted the great city of San Francisco.
Wow.
For one, it brought in the tourists, and that meant added money to the San Francisco economy and the San Francisco coffers. I mean, San Francisco loved her because she literally brought in people from out of the state, from across the country, to check her out, because she was the only one doing this kind of work in the country. She was also one of the first people who, and this was before silicone implants, she did this crazy thing where she injected industrial grade silicone into her breasts.
Oh my God.
And they show this on screen, and it's cringeworthy.
Oh my God.
Yeah, she had like 44. This was industrial grade.
Oh my goodness.
44 shots in total, I think the movie said. She went from like a 34B to a 44 double D breast size. And the scenes of the needles injecting silicone, oh my God. Sorry. Anyway, that's when you can look away. But
that's crazy. That is nuts.
Yeah, it is nuts. But this is the other. There was some, just in terms of like San Francisco history, there's all kinds of tidbits in the movie. Like San Francisco journalist Herb Cahan, he had that column for a year. He's kind of outed in this movie when a colleague talks about how they supplied him with like marijuana when it was illegal. I thought that was really interesting. And we're reminded also, you guys would like this, that the Republican hypocrisy was still a thing back in 1964, because the movie begins more or less there, because during the Republican National Convention of 1964, that took place in San Francisco, which nominated Barry Goldwater for president. We learned that the big request from GOP delegates was for reservations to see Carol Doda perform Topless at the Condor. The party of family values, hypocrites then, hypocrites now. Anyway,
I think that the Condor is still there, right?
It is.
Yeah. Well, I know this not because I frequent that establishment, because it's on Broadway, which is right where KGO was located.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, I was gonna say too. I've lived in the Bay Area since '85. Would go to San Francisco for other things, but I never frequented those places, and this was like all news to me. So I found it just fascinating. I didn't even know who Carol Doda was, but she was very, very famous in San Francisco, and I've never been to the Condor either. So.
Yeah, neither have I. Apparently, she died. People are asking if she's still alive. She died on November 9th of 2015.
Yeah,
at the age of 78. So she lived a
78.
long life. Obviously, the silicone industrial grade.
Well, I guess it affected her kid. It affected her kid. I think the movie goes into that a little bit and says, I think over time it just affected her kidneys in a really bad way.
Oh, wow.
I mean, and she felt it was something she had to do to stay current. But I actually thought she was more attractive when she was less busty. I mean, she got so busty. It just got insane.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
well,
anyway.
Carol Doda, Topless at the Condor, that's one to watch as well. So let's just go over them really quickly. So One Life gets a thumbs up. Arthur the King gets a thumbs up. The American Society of Magical Negroes, you can pass on that. It doesn't really land. Frida and Carol Doda both get thumbs up from you.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good weekend of movie watching, my friends.
Yeah, I want to mention Carol Doda, though. I wanted to do an early mention here so folks can put that on their movie going radar. But it actually opens next week at the Roxy in San Francisco and the Smith Rafael in San Rafael. And then it's gonna go from here to LA to New York, and it's gonna get a nice theatrical release. But yeah, so next week, folks, you got to check it out. It's great.
Awesome. Tim Sika, have a fabulous weekend. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week.
Okay, ladies. Thanks for having me. Bye.
So, yeah, so a lot of fun things to watch, and yeah, the Dota one comes out next week. I think at the top of my list though is Arthur the King. The dog movie with Mark Wahlberg. I'm sorry.
And he said it's good for kids too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I just love, you know what? I love bringing my kids to watch movies. It's harder with my teenage daughter, obviously, but I think I could drag Dylan with me to watch that. Definitely. Absolutely do. All right. That's our show, guys. Have a fabulous weekend. I do want to say thank you once again to Brian, who donated $18 to our super chat, and a mazel tov to John Rothman's wife. Congratulations on your retirement. God, can you imagine? I just can't even imagine being that close to retirement. Love it, love it, love it. And thank you to all of you as well. Again, go sign up on our Patreon. Go to the website, thenikkimadoroshow.com. This is a 100% crowdfunded show. We appreciate every donation that we get. Thank you, thank you, thank you. PayPal, of course, just go to paypal.com, hit the send button, and put in the email address, thenikkimadoroshow@gmail.com. I love you guys. Stay here for the Mark Thompson show, of course. Kim McAllister and John Daly. We'll have the after party show after that. Love you guys. Have a fabulous weekend. Stay safe. And we'll see you on Friday. Bye-bye. Bye.
Nikki, you're all so awesome. Miss Brown, like a beautiful blossom. You're also the best. I really can't rest. You're all so awesome.
Wow. Okay.